So welcome everyone to today's info session. The focus of this session is on the topic patient-centric blood sample collection to enable decentralized clinical trials and improve access to healthcare. Before we start, I just wanted to inform you that we'll hold a separate info session on our rules and procedures, and the date still to be confirmed. And if you have any urgent questions in the meantime, please send them to our functional email box, applicants@ihi.europa.eu. The link to the email box is also on the chat. This session, as well as all the other sessions, are going to be recorded and are going to be published on IHI's website and on B2Match platform, together with the presentations, and all information regarding future IHI call topics is indicative to subject to change. Now I'm going to give the floor to my colleague, John.
Thank you very much, Rui. So my name is John Clifford. I'm the Scientific Project Officer responsible for this topic at IHI. So in today's webinar, we will start with a few words on the IHI program. We'll then hear from the topic writer. He'll present the topic. We'll then give some information on proposal submission and evaluation, followed by some tips for writing a successful proposal. So just to repeat again that this session does not cover the rules and procedures. We will have a webinar on this at a later stage. So the Innovative Health Initiative, this is a partnership in health in the European Union. It's a partnership between the European Commission on the one side and the healthcare industry on the other, represented by several associations. So we have COSIR representing the field of medical imaging, radiotherapy, and so on. We have FBIA, including Vaccines Europe, representing the pharmaceutical and vaccines industry. We have Europa Bio representing the biotech industry, and MedTech Europe representing the medical technology industry. So IHI's general objectives. So they are to turn research and innovation into real benefits for patients and society, to deliver safe and effective health innovations that cover the entire spectrum of care, and to make Europe's health industries globally competitive. So we do have a strategic research and innovation agenda, which we refer to as the SRIA. This document details the areas that IHI should work on and helps to guide the organization's decision-making on which areas should be turned into call topics. So the focus of the SRIA is on cross-sectorial approaches to facilitate the creation of new products and services in healthcare. The goal of the SRIA is to lay the foundations for the development of safer and more effective healthcare solutions. And it's just important to point out here that the research that's supported by the IHI program remains at the pre-competitive level, as there is an expectation for industry to work together. Okay, so call 4 is a two-stage call. So what does that involve? So the call topic has been defined by what we refer to as the pre-identified industry consortium. In this consortium, industry partners have aligned around a shared challenge for industry and agreed to work together and to commit resources. This predefined, identified industry consortium then looks at ideas coming from the public sector and prepares the topic text. Once the topic text is approved by our IHI governing board, the topic is launched as a call for proposals. So during this call for proposals, the industry consortium steps aside and we open the call to applicants coming from the public side, the public sector, who form their own consortia. These applicants are, for example, academics, hospitals, regulators, patient organizations, and SMEs. These applicants will prepare what we refer to as a short proposal at stage 1. So all the submitted short proposals will undergo a competitive evaluation by an independent panel of experts. And at the end, only the top-ranked proposal will go forward to stage 2. At stage 2, the consortium with the top-ranked proposal at stage 1 and the industry, the original industry consortium that prepared the call text, they will merge. And they will then work on a longer proposal, a more detailed proposal, which will itself undergo an evaluation. If this proposal is successful at the evaluation, it will then move on to the granting phase, where the grant agreement and the consortium agreement are prepared, followed by the start of the project. So on that note, I'll give the floor to the topic writer, Tony. Please go ahead.
Thank you, John. Okay, next slide. So thanks everyone. I wish we had a forum to meet in person. This will have to do. My name is Tony Fantana, and I lead the emerging tech strategy at Lilly. So as a preparation for today's call, I went ahead and reread through the draft topic proposal, and I very much encourage you to do the same and feel very fortunate to lead and work with such a great industry consortium. And I very much look forward to working with you and integrate with this applicant consortium. And again, many thanks to my industry consortium colleagues for their hard work over the past year. Just a quick reminder, any questions that are not answered today, and I hope we definitely get to answer most of them, should go to IHI directly and not to me or my industry consortium colleagues. Next slide, please. So the challenge we all know. Venous blood has been collected for diagnostic purposes for 70 years and more, and it's a cornerstone of how we inform patient care, and it's a key element of clinical trials. It's pretty much a reflex is the traditional way to collect blood, but we all know that venipuncture can be painful and requires people to travel to their healthcare provider or clinic, and of course that results in a burden, primarily on patients, and unfortunately a very big segment of the population that is vulnerable has a high burden. So children, elderly, and we've seen during the recent pandemic can lead to increased exposure and also to anemia in, say, in oncology patients. Furthermore, the current blood collection procedures are very inflexible in order to allow for ongoing monitoring with the right frequency for treatment, to look at progression, or to intervene in decentralized clinical trials or in clinical practice. To summarize, there's just a great need to accept and implement a patient-centric as opposed to the clinic-centric blood sampling approach. Next slide, please. So it's crucially important, we believe, and that's why we're very happy to be here. And at this stage, we need to integrate a public-private cross-sector consortium. Why? Because we know that we want to develop a harmonized approach, as you see here at the very bottom of the slide in red. We want to develop a harmonized approach that is both acceptable and accessible to all stakeholders in all the healthcare systems and to ensure implementation across Europe. This can only be done through a public-private partnership. As you see here, we have the industry consortium. As John mentioned before, we have pharma, medical device, in vitro diagnostic companies, labs, and so forth, and CROs. But we're also very much looking forward to collaborate with clinical centers, especially those that are experiencing decentralized trials, with academia, and subject matter experts that are experienced in the methods for blood sampling and microsampling in particular, and also in the analysis. We want to engage patients, caregivers, and healthcare professionals just to ensure from the very beginning, very deliberately, that the user experience is core to what we do. And of course, last but not least, we want to involve regulators, policymakers, payers, and HTA experts to facilitate the acceptance. Next slide, please. So the scope is very, very ambitious. As you see here, we want to demonstrate, first of all, concordance between patient-centric microsampling techniques and the gold standard venipuncture. That is the table stakes. That's the baseline. The most important and likely the most difficult to implement is number 2, is the validation of the logistics, including shipping and standardizing central lab analysis. As I mentioned before, education and patient acceptability is going to be key, as well as the regulatory acceptability. And importantly, also looking at how do we implement in clinical practice in the EU, other non-EU European countries, and the US. Next slide, please. This is what we expect the outcomes to be. We want to enable innovations in healthcare delivery and research. So first, we want to create insights into the acceptability in the public for microsampling at home. With the recent pandemic and testing for COVID at home, we already have a pretty good hint that the public is willing we still have to create our own insights, our own education materials and such. We want to advance the translation of care from the hospital to the home, and also to be very deliberate about measuring the change in healthcare quality. We need to and want to integrate with electronic medical records. And of course, this high frequency data requires then the use of advanced analytics methodology. We want to be able to utilize this higher frequency data. And then, last but not least, we want to lay the groundwork in this project to start measuring how doctors' practices and decisions change with this higher frequency data. And of course, the most important one, can we start measuring how patient outcomes change? Next slide, please. So this is the impact. We want to improve patient experience. This is why all of us are doing this. And also to look at whether we can enable decentralized trials and decentralized care, meaning trials and care that are not necessarily bound to the geography of the clinic. So we want to generate this infrastructure and logistics for at-home collection of small volumes. So what we're looking at is less than 500 microliters blood samples, which we call microsampling, as an alternative to venipuncture. As we've discussed, the improved experience for patients and decreasing the burden is very important. We want to improve trials at home, decentralized trials, inclusion trials, and we want to be better at facilitating monitoring for the prevention, treatment, and surveillance of disease. Next slide, please. So this is probably one of the slides that you care about most as the applicants. So I'll spend some time here. Just to start with, the focus is to integrate existing innovative technologies and in establishing the infrastructure. It's, as you see down below in red, it's not the development of completely novel devices or assays. That is really important. We are focusing on taking what exists and integrating this into the fabric of how healthcare is delivered and how we do research. For this, we need a few things. One is the grant administration, from the financials to submission of deliverables, periodic reports, project management to coordinate with internal communication and meetings, oversight, risk management, IT infrastructure, and a data management plan. As we discussed, this is a lot of new data that's coming in. And then finally, of course, to coordinate and synergize with other European initiatives or relevant groups, including patient advocacy. The umbrella study, we want to create an umbrella protocol, and that requires getting approvals, creating and developing, co-developing participant and patient-facing materials, recruiting participants and patients, conducting this study, and collecting the biological samples. This is an important point in red. We're providing one device, but we're looking for the applicant consortium U to provision at least one device for collection of capillary blood in the upper arm. We're looking to develop logistical capability around implementing such new technologies, to work with device vendors, ordering devices, developing protocols, institutional review boards, so IRBs and consents, and of course to train the patients on the devices, to engage and activate patients, caregivers, clinicians, and hospitals, and of course to obtain the feedback. And finally, last but not least, to interact with the regulatory authorities and HTA bodies, payers, policymakers, and advocacy groups. Again, important that we're not looking to develop new devices or assays. We're looking to establish the fabric, the infrastructure, and the logistics. And we're looking for the applicant consortium to provide at least one device for collection of capillary blood in the upper arm. Next slide, please. From the industry consortium side, this is where we're bringing expertise and assets, including expertise in clinical trials, medical expertise in general, analytical techniques. From the sample analysis, we're actually providing also one device for capillary sampling. It's a finger stick device. Help with logistics, including the quality and assessing the quality of samples, the collection of compliance data, guidance in how we collect feedback from patients, from physicians, and then integration of the requirements and interaction with regulatory authorities. Next slide, please. The indicative budget is about 8 million euros, and as you see here, the maximum contribution from IHI is up to about 4.4 million euros. In-kind contribution from the industry partners so far, it's about 3.5, and then from the joint undertaking, it's 300,000. Next slide, please. And the indicative duration right now is 42 months. Of course, once we get together between the industry consortium colleagues and you, we may jointly agree on a different duration when we submit the full proposal. So just to summarize, thank you very much. Before passing on the stage to John for the next few slides, this topic is very much about the practical implementation of patient-centric sampling. And we're about taking some successful pilots that have been conducted already and creating a framework that works across Europe. If there had been an easier way, we would have done it, or somebody else would have done it already. I believe that only together we can actually make progress in this. Thank you, and I'm passing the stage on to John.
Thank you, Tony. So now I'll just present some slides on the proposal submission and evaluation process. So as mentioned, applicants forming the public side of the consortium will have to prepare a short proposal at stage 1. This short proposal includes part A, B, and an annex. So part A is simply completed on the funding and tenders portal and includes all of the administrative data. Part B is the narrative part of the proposal and includes sections on excellence, impact, and implementation. There's a template for this part B, which includes instructions under each section. Please read these instructions carefully. For the short proposal, there's also an annex which needs to be completed, in which you should list all of the applicants, different types of participants in the consortium, which type they are, for example, SME, hospital, patient association, etc. This annex template is also available on the submission environment. So as mentioned, the proposal template includes sections on excellence, impact, and implementation. So the evaluation of the proposals by the independent panel of experts will also follow these criteria. You can have a look at these evaluation criteria yourselves. I won't go into them here. However, it's just important to point out that to pass the evaluation, you need a score of at least 3 from 5 in each of these sections, excellence, impact, and implementation, and you need a minimum score of 10 from 15 overall to pass the evaluation. So just to mention again, only the proposal with the best score at stage 1 goes forward to the stage 2. So even if you pass the evaluation at stage 1, that doesn't necessarily mean you are successful. You need to have the top score to go forward. So just some tips for applicants. Please read all of the call relevant material carefully, especially the topic text. This is the key document against which your proposal will be evaluated. Form your consortium as early as possible, give you more time to find partners. And when preparing your proposal, please think in terms of the public-private partnership aspects of your proposal. Why is the IHI program the right framework for your project to achieve what you wanted to achieve? So it's important to demonstrate even in stage 1 that you're thinking about these aspects, and this will be picked up by the evaluators, of course. So please ensure that all of the information requested in the call text and the proposal template is provided. This will allow the evaluation experts to assess your proposal against the evaluation criteria. Please also consider and plan for the potential regulatory impact of the results which will be generated in your project if successful. So finding project partners. So of course, if you want to be an applicant, you're going to have to either join a consortium or build your own consortium. So to do this, you're going to have to go out there and start networking. So you can, of course, use your own contacts. You can interact with some of the participants in today's webinar. We will be putting up a list of all participants in today's webinar, should they agree to have that on the internet. You can use the partner search tool on the EU funding and tenders portal to find potential partners. You can, of course, contact the IHI national contact point, and you can network on social media, of course. So the final slide is just simply to mention our B2 Match platform, which you can use also to find potential partners. And this, I won't go through how to use the platform. There is a link here to a document which explains how to get onto the platform. So please use it. It's a valuable resource. So with that, I'd like to thank you for your attention, and we'll now move on to the questions.
Great. Thank you very much, John and Tony, for your presentation. We already have one question in our chat, and it's regarding to in-kind contribution. I'm going to address that question to my colleague Desmond from the legal team. So Desmond, does in-kind contribution have to be provided by industrial partners only?
Thanks. Yeah, so this is actually quite straightforward, the answer to this, but it's slightly nuanced. So the rule that we have is for these two-stage calls, the in-kind contribution is indeed the responsibility of the private members. That's industry and any contributing partners who are associated with the pre-identified industry consortium. So what we say is that it is the responsibility of industry here, but the applicant consortia should just bear it in mind as well and be aware that, if they basically make it through the competitive stage and make it two-stage two, then this is something that will have to be agreed with the industry partners. But yes, the short answer there is that it is primarily the responsibility of the industry partners.
Okay, so that's our only question for the moment. I don't know if there's any other question from the audience.
Perhaps, hi, hello, this is Karolina from the IHI legal team as well. Perhaps just to add to that, on our website, within the call documents, we have a few documents with frequently asked questions where we explain in details all the nuances related to the in-kind contributions and so on. So I invite everyone to have a look. We also have published recently a new guide for IHI contributing partners. So I invite you to have a look at our website. There is a lot of very useful documents there that answer those questions that we quite often receive. Thank you.
Thank you, Carolina. And there's just a follow-up question from Diogo regarding to in-kind. And what about private nonprofits?
Well, I mean, there's a couple of issues here. I mean, so for the stage two, what's essentially happening in relation to the in-kind is that the in-kind is coming from those members who are in the pre-identified industry consortium, which is identified in the topic text. So if we have was it a private non-profit? Is that the language that was used?
Yes.
Yeah, private non-profit. So there's a couple of possibilities here. So working from the premise that that private non-profit is not part of the pre-identified industry consortium, then there's a couple of different options. If they want to contribute in kind, then as I referred to and Carolina mentioned as well, they could have the option potentially to become a contributing partner. But if they're going to be a contributing partner and they're contributing in kind, then they wouldn't actually be involved with one of the applicant consortia at the competitive stage. What they'd basically be doing is they'd be coming in after the second stage and basically joining in that capacity as a contributing partner that had been approved by the governing board and would therefore be contributing in kind towards the project.
Thank you very much, Desmond. And are there any other questions for the topic writer?
So just a quick note. All those slides will be available online. This is a good chance to talk to me as representing the industry consortium and the thought that's gone into it. So any questions, this is a really good time to ask about the materials that I presented. Happy to answer as they come.
Hi, Tony. Yeah, thanks very much for that. And just to point out that this is really the audience's only chance to interact with you, Tony. All questions after this will be coming through the IHI office. So this is an ideal opportunity to present any questions to Tony. Thank you very much.
Yeah, I see. Yes, no, thanks, John. So I see a question about, does the scope of this open call imply one disease or several ones? This is not focused on one disease. Really, this should be pan-disease, pan-clinical research and clinical practice. It's really the idea is about how do we use the new techniques that have been available for some time? How do we catch up with the analytical techniques where we can analyze blood using microliters, and yet we collect milliliters, right? There is a change in order of magnitude that's possible. It's possible, and yet we don't do it, and we don't do it because we've been used to taking the same Vacutainers, the same 4 or 5 milliliters of blood for 70 plus years, right? So that's really the focus. It's not one disease.
Great, thank you very much, Tony. Just give it another moment to see if there's any other questions. And as Tony mentioned, the presentation will be shared with all the participants after the session, as well as the recording. So you can always refer, if any of your colleagues was unable to attend the meeting, you can always refer to the recording of the session. And we just received another question, and it's regarding the proposal timeline. So can you please clarify the proposal timeline?
So in general, basically, the submission deadline for the first stage is basically 3 months after the launch of the actual call. So when we have a date, then we will plug in the time frame.
Okay. Thank you, Desmond. So I guess
Yeah, there's a new question. Should we focus on clinical trials or clinical care or both? I very much believe, and my industry partners believe that it needs to be both. It's something that our hope is that we can connect clinical trials, better clinical trials, and better clinical care.
And we just got another question, and Tony, I'm just going to read it out.
Yes, thank you. So it's clear that devices are expected in a proposal, but it's preferred if the devices used are those from multiple device manufacturers who join a proposal, or should there be a device selection assessment criteria for choosing the best device? That is a really good question. Our sincere hope is that we'll have several device manufacturers that apply as part of the applicant consortium. We need to. This is a new space. We need to figure out what devices work best for what patients, whether it's pediatrics or it's the elderly or it's people in remote areas. So bring it on. I hope that answers the question. Happy to do follow up as well. Right. So can you clarify the issue of bringing in microsampling one device? You specifically state that the goal is not to develop new devices. Correct. So we're not looking at completely new innovation. However, there are several devices that are available already that have been shown to work in this context. So this is what we're looking for. We're not looking to develop new devices from the ground up. So there are companies that have developed devices already, and we're hoping for them to be part of the applicant consortium.
Great, thank you very much, Tony.
Yep.
We're just give it a few more moments to see if there's any more questions coming. And just a quick reminder that the draft topic text is available on our website. We will include a link to where you can find this information on our website on the chat.
Okay. Do you have any recommendations in case of microsampling techniques? Standard dry blood spot tests are in the call, or you're looking for only new microsampling techniques based tests? Let me see if I can interpret the question, and again, if I don't answer it, please do post a follow-up. We're really looking at liquid microsampling. If there's specific uses for dry blood techniques, that could be part of it. But the initial intent was to look at liquid blood. And utilizing the liquid blood microsampling technique. So the idea again being of collecting and shipping liquid blood likely to central lab locations where the data will then make its way back to the patient, to the sponsors, and to the physicians.
Thank you very much, Tony. Just a reminder, if you have any questions after this call, please contact the IHI office directly. Don't contact the topic writer. And how can you do this? There's a functional email box, applicants@ihi.europa.eu. And in the meantime, Tony, we got another question.
Okay, so is the interest specifically in microsampling? Are you interested in other techniques, perhaps with more than 500 microliters of blood? That is an interesting question. I'd like to know what the topic writer here had in mind. The interest is in new techniques, right? So not techniques that are yet to be developed, but newly developed techniques that are able to collect around that 500 microliters of liquid blood. Not sure if I can interpret that question a bit further to say that, if there are techniques that are better at, say, analyzing blood that comes from vac containers, that is out of scope. We're looking to minimize the burden that comes with collecting blood. Volume is part of that burden, and the ability to collect at home is another part of that burden. We're not necessarily looking to collect everything at home, but we want to be able to provide the option to collect at home. So the follow-up is home venipuncture by patient or caregiver. That is a really good question, and that is out of scope. So at-home venipuncture is something that's been done for some time now, and we know it works. It's limited by the availability of phlebotomists. It's just something that is problematic to scale up broadly across Europe. If there is a device that does, I'm not aware of one, but if there is a simple device that can be used by the patient or caregiver for the venipuncture at home, as long as it's around the 500 microliters, that is in scope as well.
That's great. Thank you very much, Tony. And we are still waiting for more questions from the audience. If you have any questions to the topic writer, then this is the time. So there doesn't seem to be any more questions. I'm just going then to close our today's session. There's another session on call for topic 1 tomorrow morning. If you haven't registered, you can still do so and join the session tomorrow morning. Thank you very much for attending today's session. Thank you very much, Tony and John, for your presentations. The recordings and the presentations will be available later today on our website. You'll receive an email with this information. Thank you very much.
Yes, thank you, everyone.
Thank you, everyone.